anarchist.
What?
I am a communist. I am a combination anarchist and communist. I am an anarchist.
No.
I am a communist.
No.
I am a combination anarchist and communist. Hey there, welcome to That Dang Dad. My name is Phil, and I've been making videos on YouTube for about 5 years now. I've spoken on a variety of topics, some frivolous, some serious, and many involving me telling you about something that I read or learned and what I think you should do with that information. But of course, over the last year, we've seen just how bad the misinformation and media literacy crisis is on YouTube and elsewhere. Any yahoo with a mic or a camera can just get on the internet and say whatever they want, and if they're charismatic enough or if they have enough funding, they can build a loyal audience that just laps up everything that they say uncritically. Sometimes it's not clear whether certain content is a knowing grift or simply the stumbling around of a dilettante. As I reflect on the role that I play in the information economy, a question springs to mind, a question that I hope you're also thinking about as you watch my channel. Have I ever been wrong? I've been thinking about this question a lot because recently I did something unforgivable. I hesitate to even mention it because I'm afraid of the backlash, but I suppose you'll hear about it sooner or later. The internet is horny for scandal, and a few weeks ago I showed my juicy ass in a big way. I said something inaccurate about Elden Ring lore. I know, if you're unplugging your computer in disgust, I completely understand. If you just want to know how or why, well, so do I, my friend. So do I. See, as I was giving a very brief overview of the Elden Ring timeline so that I could talk about necropolitics, or is it necropolitics? For some reason, I said that Godwin's assassination made Marika seal away the Rune of Death in her grief. But that's not true. The Rune of Death was already sealed away to bring about her Golden Order. I think I was mixing it up with the reading that Marika shattered the Elden Ring in her grief for Godwin. I got my momentous existential upheavals all mixed up. Now, was this a load-bearing part of my argument? No. Did it have anything to do with the broader topic I wanted to discuss? Also no. But was it worth taking the time to point out to me? Still no, but many of you went above and beyond the call of duty to let me know about it. Many of you. And okay, fair point. For some reason, my mistake did not jump out at me during proofreading, recording, or editing. I beefed it, simple as. But it does raise the question, have I ever been wrong about something that matters? I mean, obviously. Not too long ago in a video I did about the delightful comedy thriller The Menu, I repeated a statistic from the Salvage Collective that unsustainable farming practices meant that we only had 60 harvests left before we exhausted the soil's ability to grow food. That claim originated from a UN bureaucrat working for the Food and Agriculture Organization, but whatever research that she used to make that claim is lost to history. I ended up publishing a YouTube short correcting the record based on more up-to-date research, finding that only 16% of conventionally managed agricultural soil was at risk for this shortened lifespan. The last people I want beef with is farmers. In a similar vein, I made another iffy claim in my video, Conservatives Aren't Wrong About Liberty. In that one, I mentioned a statistic I'd read that there were 31 empty homes for every homeless person in the United States. And I felt pretty good about that stat because it was from a source associated with right-wing politics, somebody that I would have expected to downplay such a stat. Here's the problem. While the numbers in this statistic were likely true enough at the time, the way that I and many others use that stat is potentially misleading. I was making the case that homelessness is a policy choice, an intentional cruelty that we inflict on people. And I used that stat to imply that we could just scoop up 550,000 vacant homes out of these 17 million laying around and stick people in them. And this obscures a couple facts. One, many of these homes are vacant because they are uninhabitable, rotting away, loaded with mold on the edge of collapse. Two, many of these vacant homes are in rural areas that are way too far away from jobs and schools. This statistic is often employed as a counter-argument to people who say, just build more homes. But obviously we do still need to build more homes closer to jobs, schools, and public transit. In my video, I hadn't meant to downplay the need to build more homes, but my use of that data point kind of clouded the issue. In that same video, I implied that locking up dumpsters was intentional cruelty against unhoused people who scavenged for food and supplies that had been thrown away. I'd been talking about a news story involving police literally guarding a Fred Meyer's dumpster to prevent the theft of stale food, and I used images of padlocked dumpsters to drive that point home. A couple commenters pointed out that for the most part, people lock up their dumpsters because if they don't, schemers from all around the city will use them as a free local dump. Since they get charged per tonnage of waste or whatever, they lock up their dumpsters to prevent your trash from going into it, not their trash from going out. Obviously, we still do destroy day-old food and unsold clothing instead of just giving them away, but fair point about dumpster padlocks. Hey, here's a good one from my video about Trans Island. I made several references to the Singularity, a speculative future event in which human consciousness can be loaded into a computer and human society becomes fully digitized in the cloud. Except that's not what the Singularity is. As popularized by I.J. Good and Werner Vinge and others, the technological concept of the Singularity actually refers to a speculative future event in which we've invented an artificial intelligence so powerful it can rapidly improve itself and surpass our ability to control it. Some later authors have come to use the Singularity as a term for any sufficiently marvelous technology that escapes our control and alters human life forever. And that's probably how I started associating it with the idea of uploading consciousness to the cloud, but yeah, that's not the accepted use of that term. My bad. Now, these examples I've given so far are all issues where I've been wrong about a fact or a statistic, something that can be quantified or defined with specificity. But I've also made a lot of value claims and moral judgments on this channel. Have I ever been, ideologically wrong? Obviously, that's a tough question to answer, in part because so many of these claims are subjective or reliant on specific contexts. Here's an example. Back when my channel first popped off with police abolition stuff, my first few videos suggested that we needed to invest in mental health instead of cops. And I implied that hospitalizing people in crisis was far more humane than jailing them like we were doing now. Commenters pointed out the horrific abuses happening in psychiatric hospitals all around the world to this day, and they said I was just trading one carceral system for another. I was disturbed by that criticism, and I did a bunch of research, and I ended up publishing a video soon after talking about the abusive carceral DNA living inside the modern mental health care system. The research opened up my eyes to a ton of things I had never encountered before, and it really challenged some deeply held assumptions I had about the way the world works. A close family member of mine did a couple tours in a psych hospital, and it saved her life. I thought I was advocating for other families to enjoy that same relief. So was I wrong to say that we should put people in hospitals instead of prisons? I'd like to think in my mind I was envisioning a hypothetical future hospital centered on dignity, community, and autonomy. But then of course there's the added baggage of saying that we need to put them anywhere at all. I think an abolitionist future has a much different paradigm in terms of how we respond to people in crisis. I still don't exactly know how to square that circle in my own mind, but I can definitely see that my first couple videos had not given the topic enough thought. Here's another one, and I'm very curious to hear what you think about this criticism. One of my earliest videos on this channel is a little dissection of the sexual consent politics in the horror movie Scream. I had just rewatched it at the time, and I was really surprised at the way that it handled sex for a slasher in the 90s. In talking about the scene in the film where Billy comes into Sydney's bedroom and they make out, I pointed out that Sydney and Billy discuss a sexual boundary. They start kissing, gets passionate, Billy's fingers slide to the edge of the boundary, Sydney moves his hands away, says it's time to stop, and he stops. They flirt a little bit more back and forth, and then he leaves. In my video, I praised this as a pretty decent sexual consent negotiation between two young people. Sydney wasn't afraid to verbalize a boundary, she also wasn't afraid to stick to it in the heat of the moment. Billy was obviously dancing too close to the edge the more turned on he got, but he stopped when asked to stop. And instead of making her feel bad, he even kind of reassured Sydney that he wanted to adhere to her boundary. To me, this scene read as very authentic. Just two people without a lot of life experience figuring out their relationship in real time with all the little pushes and pulls that involves. And can we just set aside the fact that Billy was one of the killers for this? I feel like that kind of muddies the waters. Let's just pretend the killer was, Henry Winkler instead. Anyway, last week I received a new comment on the video from somebody that was very upset with me for praising that scene. According to them, if somebody expresses a boundary, it is never okay to push that boundary, to tiptoe around it, or to force them to reiterate it or move your hand away from them or whatever. When this commenter watched that scene, they saw an abuser pushing limits and seeing what he could get away with. And yeah, it's not okay to push boundaries. If your partner says, please don't touch my underwear, and you touch their underwear, making them say, hey, knock it off, you saying, oops, hee, I forgot, doesn't magically make it better. So was I wrong to praise that scene? I mean, I don't know. From my perspective, I was watching a scene about two 18-year-old high schoolers figuring out their sexuality together. It was messy, it was imperfect, there were things Billy should have done differently. But in my mind, I wasn't praising the scene for being a good PSA on consent. I was praising it for being a 1996 slasher that affirmed Sydney's right to her own sexual autonomy. I was praising it for feeling real and showing a very realistic path through a sexual consent negotiation. My commenter, on the other hand, saw an entirely different scene playing out. Their comment implied that they themselves were the victim of abuse that began in a very Billy Loomis kind of way, so how could they not? So were they right to criticize me? I mean, if I could go back and reshoot that video, I think I would absolutely say some things in a different way, and definitely make more of an effort to highlight the issues that the commenter mentioned, because they weren't wrong. I stand by my original thoughts on the film, but I recognize that I did not communicate as effectively as I should have. Oh, and to this day, I still receive angry comments on my Lies I Told as a Cop video for accusing Kyle Rittenhouse of being a racist murderer. In light of all the evidence that came out at the trial, was I wrong to say that? No, I wasn't. Kyle Rittenhouse is a racist murderer, and I wish him the maximum amount of human duress a human being can possibly experience. Gargle my ass, Kyle stans. Anyway, what's the point of this video? Why are we discussing this right now? I don't know, man. I'm just kind of dragging my feet on doing the bedtime stories video that I promised to do. Just feels like it's gonna be a lot of work. Aside from that though, it's probably obvious from several of the videos that I've put out this spring and summer, but I've been thinking a lot about the process of how I and others make our stuff. There's an inherent sort of arrogance that you have to cultivate to make politically charged art for an audience consisting of both strangers and also your beloved friend Alan. Hi Alan. Like, it takes some chutzpah to decide that the world desperately needs to hear your very special thoughts on foreign policy or whatever. So, occupying that place of arrogance, I wonder about how these errors affect your opinion of my credibility and conscientiousness about some of these deadly serious topics. The cocky shithead side of me wants to be like, ugh, stop being pedantic about minor shit that doesn't matter, so I misuse the term singularity, it didn't detract from the point I was trying to make, get over it. And the deeply neurotic, insecure side of me is like, can't believe I was wrong about the Rune of Death, I don't deserve a YouTube channel, nobody should listen to me because I'm a fucking lunkhead. I suspect the truth is somewhere in the middle, so I kinda wanted to just throw it out there that, yes, I make mistakes. And yes, I kick myself when I fail to double check some easily verifiable fact and just blurt out some nonsense. And I do appreciate gentle corrections and recalibrations when they are necessary. Some of you younger folk out there think you know everything and you make errors because you lack life experience. But just wait till you get to be my age and you have that life experience, so you make errors because you know everything. It never ends, baby. Anyway, thank you for indulging my posting about posting, and thanks for sticking around even though sometimes I say stuff wrong about dumpsters and the Rune of Death. I guess I owe you guys that bedtime story compilation now. And actually, I am excited to share one of my daughter's favorite books with you. I think you'll get a kick out of it. Anyway, guess I'll get cracking on that. Have a good night. I am an anarchist. What? I am a communist. I am a combination anarchist and communist. I am an anarchist. No. I am a communist. No. I am a combination anarchist and communist.